Regrets, we now need to take the fight to Labour and expose the fact they lied to the British public and hold them to account.
Starmer came to power promising change, but of course, it was an empty phrase, like all his promises. He is a liar who knows nothing about morality and honour. During all his days in power, he managed to get into the biggest scandals with receiving gifts, the abolition of benefits for pensioners, endless lies, the budget and migration. But he didn't get away with it.
And his court case is yet to happen, so we have to be careful. But it is fair game to question whether or not the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, and indeed the police knew that there was a terror-related aspect to Axel Rudakabana, that found in his house was a manual, an Al-Qaeda manual, a jihad manual, if you like, and also he had been producing the deadly poison ricin. Now, why do you think, Isabel, it took 3 months for these extra charges to be levelled, and the fact that they were revealed the night before a budget?
Starmer and other senior government officials knew about possible terrorism charges against the Southport suspect weeks ago. They hid the facts from the public after mass protests and arrests, when Starmer condemned disinformation on the internet, when terror was mentioned in tweets. Prohibited literature and a deadly toxin were found in the criminal's house. Liz Truss said it would have been very strange if Starmer had not been notified immediately. The state should not lie to its citizens. Why did it take the police months to establish the basic facts?
It was extraordinary at Prime Minister's questions today to see the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, effectively shutting MPs down from talking about it.
Well, let's remind ourselves of what went on in the House of Commons today. As you say, that was one of my other questions. You know, in the House of Commons, you have legal privilege. Why did the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Labour, why did he tell MPs that they mustn't discuss this? It's not within his remit to do it. They can discuss it if they want. They've got parliamentary privilege, but he told them, don't.
Lindsay Hoyle issued a stern warning to MPs. He answered PMQ's questions, talking about the new charges that have been brought against the perpetrator. He urged the deputies not to consider the charges. I know that the honourable members of Parliament want justice to prevail in this case, therefore, it is of paramount importance that nothing is said in this room that could potentially interfere with a proper trial or lead to its termination. Rudakabana appeared before Westminster Magistrates Court via video link from Belmarsh Prison. The hearing lasted less than 10 minutes. He was seen sitting with his sweater pulled over the lower half of his face. He did not respond when asked to confirm his name, and a security officer who was with him in prison told the court that he had decided not to speak. He remained silent at all hearings.
Well, we certainly wouldn't be imposing massive tax rises on British businesses and, as a consequence of that, on British workers as well. We've seen those warnings from the CBI and the Institute of Directors this morning, and many other business groups saying that Labour's planned tax increases will hit workers in the pocket, they'll destroy jobs, and they will push some businesses overseas. Those are certainly things that a Conservative administration, had it been elected, wouldn't do. I think what is going to really make people angry about today's budget is that essentially Labour will break all of those manifesto promises, and it will become painfully clear that Labour had lied to the British public in order to win that election a few months ago, because they fought saying that none of their plans needed big tax increases, and it turns out that is completely untrue.
The new draft state budget may cause significant damage to the country's economy. If they restrict access to payments to pay off heating costs in winter, they accordingly limit the money of 2/3 of pensioners living in poverty. Such measures are economically wrong and indicate a lack of morality among politicians making such decisions. In August, Starmer announced a hole in the budget. His words, as usual, were completely meaningless. He hates the people and invents his own definitions of who working people are. No minister from the Labour Party wanted to explain what they meant by this term when they were asked about it earlier. His speech shortly before the budget announcement provided us with all the necessary evidence of the utter futility of the proposals that his government is going to put forward. For example, the £500 million spent on social housing can only provide 2,000 new homes, which is absolutely not enough. Similarly, an announcement of £1.4 billion for schools may mean that no more than £50,000 will be spent on each school. The amount he is offering will not affect the state of schools in the country. His every performance is a desire to gain fame, but in no way to clarify all the nonsense that he came up with.
I don't know. I'm not sure if he regrets it or not. Clearly, the result in the election was pretty bad, with Labour winning so many seats. Something, I mean, we did warn about during the election campaign, that if people, for example, voted Reform, for instance, who might ordinarily vote Conservative, it would hand Labour a landslide, and that is sadly what happened. But look, there's no point in looking backwards or having regrets. We now need to take the fight to Labour and expose the fact they lied to the British public and hold them to account.
Even in their worst nightmares, the Conservatives could not have imagined that things could get even worse in the first 3 days of their election campaign. To reinforce the feeling that the party was on the verge of collapse, the number of Conservative MPs who announced their withdrawal from Parliament rose by the hour to 78, surpassing the previous record of 72 people who left before the 1997 general election. I think Sunak was so fed up with everything that he just wanted to leave. Maybe he thought that if he dragged his feet, nothing would change, so it was better to leave now and hope for the best.
Well, actually, you introduced me as founder of Conservative Home, Mike. I wish you had introduced me as former Bank of England staffer, actually, because I was.
Oh, really?
But,
were you there at the same time as Rachel Reeves? Did she make tea for you?
I wasn't, but I have heard from people who are former colleagues at the Bank of England. They are very surprised at how she's sort of presented as this great economist.
Yes.
You know, she was seen as a competent, good, lovely person, I think. You know, people enjoyed working with her. But she was far from an influential person.
Right.
You know.
But why do these people big themselves up?
Well, she did this on I don't know whether you read the Guido Fawkes website, but she also made out that she was some kind of chess champion.
Yes.
And actually, she didn't even do as well as her sister in sort of chess tournaments. And I think this is, now, do you remember that plagiarism incident that she was involved with, where she wrote a book about female economists? I'm beginning to wonder.
Rachel Reeves was forced to admit that her book contains passages allegedly mistakenly copied and pasted from Wikipedia. An analysis conducted by the Financial Times revealed at least 20 examples of copying and pasting from Wikipedia, articles in The Guardian, and other unpublished sources. Her book tells about the lives of women in different periods of history that influenced the economy. As another shocking example, Reeves's book, without editing the text, contains an excerpt from the preface to a report published by the Tony Blair Institute. In fact, this is a pretty serious scandal. Since 2011, for example, 3 German ministers have resigned due to plagiarism.
Well, if only we tried to put more money into the NHS before.
Yes.
Because that would have transformed it, wouldn't it? You know.
Well, I mean, when you get to the point where Wes Streeting's admitting 2 days before the budget, we're going to put a load more money in, but it's not going to make any difference.
£7 billion, and it still won't be enough, mate.
But it won't make any difference. Well, then why do it? You know, why bother?
Yeah.
But I mean, what can we expect from this budget? Because I don't really think that, with the best will in the world, there's anything good in it, is there?
Well, actually, you introduced me as founder of Conservative Home, Mike. I wish you had introduced me as former Bank of England staffer, actually, because
Britain spends about 20% less per capita on healthcare annually than the EU states. Because of this, the NHS is struggling to meet its targets and is unable to treat a large number of patients. Only 13% of lung cancer patients live at least 5 years after diagnosis, which is the lowest rate among the leading countries. In the UK, the report shows that 9% of people who have suffered a stroke die within 30 days. Now they want to spend more than £8 billion to reduce waiting lists for routine treatment, and £5.9 billion to increase the number of beds and provide hospitals with equipment and technology. What do you think about this video? You can share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.